There are a ton of horror movies inspired by the paranormal investigations done by Ed and Lorraine Warren. Today, I'm talking about some of their biggest cases that haunted them long after their investigations were complete. I'm your host James, and these are the top 10 demonic possession cases that terrified Ed and Lorraine Warren. And we're starting things off with the case of Arne Cheyenne Johnson. 1981, a chilling case involved Arne Johnson became infamous due to its connection with famed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Johnson was accused of stabbing his landlord to death during a heated argument, but what made this case so odd was the defense's claim that Johnson had committed the act while under the influence of demonic possession. The Warrens had entered the picture before the stabbing took place, when Johnson's fiance's younger brother exhibited signs of what they believed at the time to be demonic possession. And called in to investigate, the Warrens determined that an exorcism was necessary to save the young boy, and during this exorcism, David, the young boy, allegedly levitated into the air and predicted the death of Alan Bono, the landlord, at Arne Johnson's hands. Arne then taunted the demon and seemingly invited it to possess him instead, and then several months later, he ended up taking Bono's life, just like the prophecy prophesied. When the case went to trial, Johnson's defense team tried to introduce this supernatural element of demonic possession into the mix, with the Warrens testifying in court to support the claim, but the judge ultimately ruled such defense inadmissible, and Johnson was convicted of his crime. Next up, we have the story that inspired the movie The Haunting in Connecticut. In 1986, Carmen and Al Snedeker rented a house in Southington, Connecticut. Little did they know that their new residence held a sinister secret. It had once been a funeral parlor. The Snedekers found mortuary tools in the basement. Turns out the house wasn't just a home, but a former abode for the deceased, many of whom, it appeared, had never truly left. The family reported this lingering scent of rotting flesh which permeated in the air, and the water would occasionally run red like blood. The haunting escalated further as the Snedekers' eldest son started experiencing terrifying visions and claimed to see these malevolent spirits. Carmen and Al even reported being scandalously touched by these apparitions, leaving them quite traumatized and terrified, and they finally sought help from Ed and Lorraine. The Warrens, after a thorough examination of the house, did confirm the haunting to be the tormented souls of the deceased who had passed through the funeral home, and they suspected that the morticians who'd once operated there had engaged in sinister and unethical practices with the bodies, angering the spirits and keeping them from moving on. At number 8, we have the Perron Family Case. In 1970, Roger and Carolyn Perron moved to a seemingly idyllic 200-acre farmhouse in Rhode Island with their 5 young daughters. Turns out, though, that their new home had a very dark past. Over the years, a series of former residents had met horrifying ends within the home. Some died in mysterious circumstances, and others took their own lives. The Perrons came to believe that the spirits of these souls were roaming around their house. The paranormal activity the family experienced ran the gamut from benevolent to malevolent. Some spirits appeared harmless, even playing with the Perron children and occasionally lending a hand with household chores, but other, more sinister entities began tormenting the family, and in 1974, the family turned to Ed and Lorraine Warren for help. Apparently, though, after they showed up, stuff just got worse, reaching a point where Roger Perron felt like he needed to just ask the Warrens to leave. Next on the list, we have the Enfield Poltergeist. In 1977, Peggy Hodgson, a single mother of 4, made a terrifying call to the police from her Enfield home in North London. She reported unsettling phenomena that had been going on in her house. Peggy claimed to have witnessed furniture mysteriously moving, and 2 of her children, Janet and Margaret, claimed to have heard strange knocking sounds coming from inside the walls. Little did they know that their lives were about to be changed by one of the most famous poltergeist cases in history. Over the course of the next 18 months, more than 30 individuals, including neighbors, psychic researchers, journalists, they came to the Hodgson home to investigate these bizarre occurrences. And witness reported heavy furniture moving on its own, objects being hurled across rooms without any apparent cause. The paranormal activity reached an even more alarming level when Janet and Margaret Hodgson were photographed levitating several feet above their beds. Ed and Lorraine Warren Warren were contacted in 1978, and they concluded that a malevolent and demonic presence had taken residence in the Enfield house. Number 6, the exorcism of the Southend Werewolf. This next case unfolded in Essex, England. A seemingly ordinary carpenter named William Ramsey claimed to be plagued by a demonic possession that drove him to transform into a werewolf-like creature. Ramsey's ordeal began at the tender age of 9 when he apparently experienced his first transformation. While playing outdoors, he suddenly felt an unnaturally cold breeze and smelt a horrible odor, which triggered a violent frenzy. And during this episode, he exhibited incredible strength, uprooting a fence post still attached to the fence and gnawing at the wire mesh. Ramsey's next transformation wouldn't occur till much later when he was an adult though, and in these supposed transformations, he'd experience sudden violent fits of rage where he would display what witnesses described as almost inhuman strength. He would bare his teeth, he would growl menacingly, and he could contort his hands into claw-like shapes. In 1989, the Warrens got wind of Bill Ramsey. They convinced him to travel from England to their church in Connecticut, where a specialist in exorcism, Bishop Robert McKenna, would attempt to rid him of the demonic presence. And according to everyone involved, the exorcism was a success, and Bill went on to live a werewolf-free life. At our number 5 spot, we have the Dollhouse. This is a lesser known case associated with Ed and Lorraine. It involves a haunted dollhouse that was believed to be inhabited by malevolent spirits. Now, this dollhouse wasn't your typical child's toy. It was a miniature replica of a house, and some of the stuff going on within this dollhouse included mysterious movements of the miniature furniture and figures inside, rearranging themselves in eerie, unexplainable ways. Ed and Lorraine conducted their paranormal investigation of the dollhouse, which included methods like interviews with witnesses, psychic readings, and attempts to communicate with whatever spirits were attached to the dollhouse. It's unclear whether the Warrens were able to permanently rid the dollhouse of this malevolent spirit, or if the case is just unresolved. Next on the list is the Union Cemetery case. This Connecticut cemetery became a major location for their work because of the persistent reports of ghostly apparitions and strange phenomena going on there. The site had a reputation for being one of the most haunted cemeteries in the United States. One of the most famous occurrences at Union Cemetery is the White Lady legend. Witnesses claim to have seen the ghostly figure of a woman in a white dress wandering amongst the tombstones, often vanishing into thin air. This apparition was said to be the spirit of a grieving mother searching for her deceased child, and the Warrens conducted a number of investigations at Union Cemetery to document and understand the reported supernatural activity. They employed a lot of tools and techniques to capture evidence of the paranormal: photography, audio recordings, and of course eyewitness testimonies. And over the years they accumulated a pile of data and accounts from those who had experienced encounters with these spirits at the cemetery. Next up is the Smurl Haunting. In 1974, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into a seemingly ordinary house on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, expecting nothing more than a peaceful home for their family. But their lives took a terrifying turn when they began to experience a series of unexplainable, unsettling events that convinced them that their home was being haunted by a malevolent spirit. The Smurls reported a long list of creepy stuff, all pointing to the presence of a demon within their house. They claimed that the entity had brutally slammed their German Shepherd into a wall, oh no, bit Jack's ear, and even pushed one of their daughters down a flight of stairs. In 1986, the Smurls reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren for help. They confirmed the sinister presence within the Smurl home. Ed Warren even claimed to have witnessed a dark mass forming inside the house. He also claimed to have seen a message written in a mirror telling him to get out, which he believed to have been left by the entity. Coming in at number 2, we have probably the most famous Ed and Lorraine Warren case, the Amityville case in Long Island, New York, 1975. The story began with the Lutz family, who moved into what appeared to be this picturesque suburban home. What they didn't know was that just a year prior, the house had been the site of a gruesome mass murder committed by Ronald Defoe Jr., who had taken the lives of 6 members of his family. In the first 28 days of their stay there, the Lutz family experienced just an onslaught of terror. They reported swarms of flies appearing out of nowhere, unexplained banging noises echoing throughout their house, ooze dripping down their walls, and even seeing full-on apparitions. The most outlandish thing they would report, though, is that some members of the family would allegedly levitate off their beds. When the Lutz family turned to Ed and Lorraine Warren for help, they agreed to conduct a cleansing of the house, and during their visit they captured photographs of the house, one of which seems to show a small boy standing in the shadows with glowing eyes, which is one of the most famous ghost photos in history. And it's pretty creepy if that boy indeed was not in the home at the time, which everyone claims wasn't. Lorraine Warren herself has expressed that out of all the cases she's been involved in, the Amityville house haunts her the most, or haunted her the most. But that's gonna bring us to number 1 with the Annabelle case. The Annabelle case revolves around a seemingly innocuous object, an ordinary Raggedy Ann doll. Donna, a young nurse, received this doll as a gift from her mother, and initially it appeared to be just a harmless toy, but it didn't take long before strange events started to unfold in Donna's apartment, where she lived with her roommate, Angie. The doll had a tendency to move on its own, even moving from one room to another. Notes with chilling messages, "Help me," written in a child's handwriting, starting appearing throughout the apartment. Lou, Angie's boyfriend, claimed to have experienced a nightmarish encounter. He woke up one night paralyzed with fear and then just saw the doll slowly crawling up his body, seemingly attempting to strangle him. Donna and Angie sought the guidance of a medium who identified the entity attached to the doll as the spirit of a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins. The medium insisted that the spirit meant no harm, but Ed and Lorraine Warren had a different interpretation. They believed a malevolent demonic presence was behind the unsettling phenomena surrounding the doll. The Warrens performed a blessing in Donna's residence before deciding to take possession of Annabelle, removing it from the young woman's lives. It sat for years in Ed and Lorraine's occult museum of the paranormal before it finally closed. With all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.